At dinner, my daughter-in-law called me useless and hurled a plate right at my head. My son didn't say a word. I didn't either. I just stood up and started figuring things out. By the next morning, the Wi-Fi was gone. Their bank account was empty, and the house wasn't theirs anymore. "How dare you turn down my mom, you useless old woman!" My daughter-in-law's scream ripped through the dining room. Then it happened. A dinner plate sailed through the air and smashed against the wall inches from my head. A sharp shard nicked my cheek, and sauce from the roast dripped slowly down my cardigan. I was sitting at the head of my own table. For 2 years, my son Ryan and his wife Brooke had been living with me in my house on the outskirts of Phoenix. What started as temporary help after Ryan lost his job had turned into a full-on takeover. Tonight was the breaking point. Brooke demanded I either take in her mom who was in financial trouble or pay her $1,500 a month in support. Ryan stared at his plate. He didn't look up. The silence in the room was so thick you could hear the old wall clock ticking. Brooke was breathing hard, her face flushed with rage. She thought she had me cornered because I adored my grandkids and wanted to keep the peace. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped softly on the hardwood. I grabbed a napkin, dabbed the sauce off my shoulder, and carefully set the little porcelain shard that had landed in my collar on the table. I looked Brooke straight in the eyes. My hand wasn't shaking. "You have no idea what I'm capable of," I said quietly, but with a steel in my voice that froze the whole room. Brooke let out a nasty laugh, but Ryan finally lifted his head. I saw real fear flash in his eyes. He knew that tone from my days running a department at the bank. I wasn't some frail widow you could push around. I owned this house, and I owned my life. The game had just flipped. Brooke waved her hand around dramatically. "Oh, stop with the drama. Helen, it's just a plate. You've got plenty more in the cabinet, but my mom has nothing. You're sitting on all this money and this big house while we have to scrape by." I didn't answer. I went to the kitchen, got the broom and dustpan, and started sweeping up the pieces. Every motion was deliberate. I tuned out her continued insults. Ryan half-heartedly tried to calm her. Brooke let it go for tonight. She shoved his hand away. "No, she needs to understand that we're the family now. She's just a guest in our life." I stood up straight and dumped the shards in the trash. "A guest," I repeated calmly. "Interesting." I left the room and headed up to my office on the second floor. I locked the door. It was time to get my facts straight. I pulled out my thick folder labeled House and Finances. Since the two of them moved in, I'd been covering all the utilities, electricity, water, internet, and most of the weekly groceries. Ryan occasionally threw me a little contribution that barely touched the heating bill. Brooke controlled their joint account and was always claiming they had to save for the kids' future. That night, I barely slept. I crunched the numbers. I listed every payment I'd made over the last 24 months. I checked the property records. The house was 100% mine. Ryan's name wasn't on anything. He hadn't inherited it. I'd built and paid it off with my late husband. The next morning at 6 a.m., I sat in the kitchen sipping my coffee. When Brooke shuffled in expecting breakfast already on the table, she found an empty counter and me with a notepad. I looked at her and didn't smile. The first move in my plan was already done. I'd canceled the automatic transfer to their household account. Brooke stared into the empty fridge. "Where's the deli meat? And the organic eggs for the kids?" I took a sip of my coffee. "I didn't do the shopping today, Brooke. From now on, everyone fends for themselves." "I figure that's only fair, since you've got that $1,500 a month free for your mom." She couldn't believe her ears. "Are you serious? You're gonna let your grandkids go hungry?" I stayed calm. "The kids have plenty of cereal, but the smoked salmon and that fancy cheese you love, those are luxuries starting today." Ryan wandered into the kitchen, still half asleep. "Mom, what's going on? Why are you two fighting again?" I looked him square in the eye. "We're not fighting, Ryan. We're setting boundaries. Since Brooke says I'm just a guest now, I'm gonna start acting like one. I'll only pay for myself." Brooke laughed nervously. "You're being so petty." "Fine. We'll use our own money." She grabbed her phone, probably to order something online. But after a few seconds, her face went pale. "Ryan, why is our joint account overdrawn?" Ryan scratched his head. "That can't be right. Mom always wires the support on the first." I shook my head. "Not anymore. I stopped the voluntary payments. Same with your phone bills, which somehow were still coming out of my account." Brooke turned white. She'd gotten so used to my financial safety net that she'd forgotten how expensive their lifestyle really was. She controlled Ryan's paycheck, but without my monthly $800 boost and me covering all the fixed costs, their house of cards was collapsing. "You can't do this," she screamed. I stood up and put my mug in the dishwasher, my own little one, which I'd plugged in with a lock the night before. "I can do a whole lot more, Brooke. This is just the beginning." I grabbed my purse and left for a long walk. I needed to see my friend Carla. We had things to discuss. When I got back 3 hours later, the house was in chaos. Brooke was desperately trying to restart the internet router. "Helen, the Wi-Fi's not working. The kids need it for school, and I have to work." I took off my jacket and hung it neatly on the hook. "The Wi-Fi password has been changed. Since I'm the only one paying the bill, I decided we need to cut back on the radiation in the house. It's better for my sleep." "You're evil," she hissed. She stood in the hallway, hair a mess. Ryan sat resigned on the stairs. "Mom, please, this is childish. We need the internet." I looked at my son. "Ryan, you're 35 years old. If you need internet, get your own plan. But remember, the wiring in this house is mine. No new drilling or installations without my written okay." I went to the kitchen and pulled out a laminated sheet. I taped it to the fridge with clear tape. It was the new house rules for shared spaces. "What's that?" Ryan asked quietly. "Starting tomorrow, the living room locks at 8 p.m. It's my quiet zone. The laundry room is only available for you on Tuesdays and Thursdays to save water and electricity costs you haven't been helping with. And most important, the basement storage room Brooke uses for her mom's old furniture needs to be cleared out by the weekend." Brooke stepped right up to me. "And if we don't, you gonna sue us. That takes years." I gave a thin smile. "I don't need courts, Brooke. I have the keys to every room in this house. I have the circuit breakers in the basement. And I have the patience you're missing." I saw Brooke swallow hard. She was starting to realize that throwing a plate or any physical outburst couldn't touch my quiet, systematic control. She had no leverage. I had the money, the property, and the calm. "Good night," I said pleasantly, and went to my room, which I now locked every single time. Saturday morning started with loud banging. Brooke and Ryan were struggling to haul her mom's heavy oak cabinets out of the basement. I sat on the patio reading the newspaper. Helen at least helped with the door, Ryan called exhausted. I didn't even look up. "I've got back issues, Ryan. You know that. Besides, it was your choice to fill the basement like that." Brooke was beside herself. "Where are we supposed to put all this stuff? Storage costs $200 a month." I turned the page. "Maybe your mom can take it." "Oh wait, she has no money." "Or you could sell it. That might cover your overdraft." It was tough, but it had to be done. For years, I'd smiled through everything. I'd watch the grandkids so they could go to the movies while I folded laundry. That was over. When the kids asked if I'd play with them, I said kindly, "Ask your mom. She's got time now that she can't be online all day." Brooke came out to the patio sweating. You're trying to force us out, aren't you? Just say it. I set the paper down and looked at her calmly. I'm not forcing anyone out. I'm just restoring what free living should look like: modesty and respect. Since you're not showing either, I'm removing the extras. We'll move out, she threatened. We'll find something right away. I nodded. Glad to hear it. The housing market around here is tight, especially with shaky credit and Ryan's spotty income, but I'm sure you'll manage. Ryan looked at me stunned. How do you know about the credit report? I worked at the bank for 30 years, Ryan. I know how to read a balance sheet. And I know you two haven't made the payments on that leased SUV for 2 months now. The silence that followed was beautiful. They realized I wasn't just the homeowner, I also had information they'd tried to hide. I wasn't the useless woman. I was the only one who'd been holding their lives together financially. The week dragged on in icy silence. Brooke tried to ignore me, but that got hard on Wednesday night when the lights went out in the kitchen and hallway. The only rooms still lit were my living room and bedroom. Helen. The breaker tripped, Brooke yelled from the darkness. I cracked open my door. No, the breaker's fine. I just turned off the circuits for the rooms you're using without chipping in for the electric bill. Since you didn't have the money for your share of the monthly costs, I figured you'd want to save energy. This is coercion, Ryan shouted from the stairs. No, this is budgeting, I corrected him gently. As a retiree, I can't afford to bankroll your high electric use for the game consoles and dryer all by myself. If you want power, bring me the $250 for your portion of the utilities from the last few months tomorrow. I heard Brooke cursing in the dark. She tripped over a shoe. In the old days, I would have rushed over to check if she was okay. Today, I stayed put. There are flashlights in the kitchen cabinet. You'll have to buy your own batteries, though. I closed my door again. I could hear them whispering, plotting how to change my mind. But they had nothing left to pressure me with. The grandkids. The kids loved me, and I still spent time with them in the yard or at the park. But I refused to be the unpaid nanny while Brooke lounged on the couch upstairs. The next morning, an envelope was on the kitchen table. $250 in small bills, probably the last cash Brooke had stashed somewhere. I took the money, flipped the breakers back on, and wrote a receipt. Thank you. That covers electricity for this month. The water bill's due Friday. Brooke looked at me with pure hatred. But behind the hate was something new: desperation. She was realizing her threats had no bite anymore. I wasn't the woman who feared a fight. I was the woman who had already won because I controlled the resources. Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was my friend Carla, a former real estate agent with a clipboard under her arm. Brooke opened the door and stared at her confused. Who are you? Good afternoon, Carla said professionally. I'm here to assess the house for the upcoming partial rental. Brooke froze. Partial rental. What partial rental? I stepped into the hallway. Ah, Carla, come on in. As you know, this house is way too big for me alone. Since Ryan and Brooke are planning to move out anyway, like they mentioned the other day, I've decided to turn the upstairs into a separate unit for students or a small group. It'll be a nice boost to my retirement. Brooke nearly screamed. The upstairs. That's where our bedrooms are. Where are we supposed to go? I shrugged. Well, you're still here for now, but since you pay no rent and have no lease legally, you're just guests. And guests can be asked to move to the smaller rooms downstairs, so the profitable spaces upstairs can be rented out. Ryan came out of the living room. Mom, you can't do that. This is our whole life. No, Ryan, I said calmly. This is where your stuff is. Your life is something you're supposed to pay for yourself. Carla, take a good look at the big bathroom especially. Future tenants will love that. Carla started taking notes and snapping photos. Brooke tried to block the camera, but Carla politely moved her aside with cool grace. "Excuse me, young lady, I'm just doing my job." The message landed. I was ready to change the house completely. If they weren't contributing value, I'd find people who would. The idea of sharing a bathroom with random students was Brooke's worst nightmare. She loved her privacy and her status. Both were dissolving right in front of her. When Carla left, Brooke was quieter than I'd ever seen her. That evening, for the first time in months, I heard Ryan and Brooke really fighting, not at me, but at each other. "I told you we had to be careful," Ryan yelled. "You just had to provoke her about your mom." "Now it's my fault," Brooke snapped back. "You're the one who can't hold a job. You let your mom treat you like a little boy." I sat in the kitchen with a glass of wine. It didn't hurt to hear it. It felt like justice. Ryan had hidden behind Brooke for years whenever she insulted me. He'd used my kindness as a shield for his own laziness. Suddenly there was a knock at my door. It was Ryan. He looked miserable. "Mom, can we talk?" Without Brooke, I let him in. He sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. "I'm sorry. For everything. The plate. I should have said something." I looked at him for a long moment. "Yes, you should have Ryan. 2 years ago, a year ago, or last month." Saying it now, when the money's tight and the Wi-Fi's off, kind of takes the shine off the apology, don't you think? He was almost crying. "What am I supposed to do? She wants me to force you to put the house in my name. She says it's the only way we have a future." I laughed softly. "That's never going to happen, Ryan. This house is my security. If I gave it to you, Brooke would have me out the door in a week. You know that." He nodded slowly. "I know. If you want to save your family, Ryan, get a job, any job. And move with your wife into a place you can actually afford. I'll help with the move financially one time, but you won't be living here anymore." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You're serious? You really want us out?" "I want my house back, Ryan. And I want my peace back. Neither is possible with Brooke here." He stood up and left without another word. The lines were finally drawn for good. 3 weeks later, a small rental truck pulled up in front of the house. It wasn't the fancy full-service movers Brooke had wanted. It was a self-drive van that Ryan was behind the wheel of. Brooke packed boxes with a face that could curdle milk. She wouldn't even look at me. She'd tried to sneak some of my heirlooms into her boxes, but I'd checked everyone before it got taped shut. "That stays here, Brooke. It belongs with the house," I'd said calmly when she tried to slip my silver serving bowl into a box. Her mom didn't come to help. Why would she? There was nothing left to take. Ryan was quiet. He carried box after box. When the house was almost empty, the upstairs rooms echoing, and only my furniture left, he came out to the garden to find me. "We found a small apartment in Glendale," he said. "It's not great, but it'll do." "It's a start, Ryan," I answered. I handed him an envelope. "That's the security deposit and first month's rent, a gift for the kids. Consider it my last financial bailout in your life." He took the envelope and squeezed my hand. "Thanks, Mom," Brooke called from outside Ryan. "We gotta go. Leave the old witch alone already." Ryan flinched but said nothing more. He got in the truck, started it up, and drove away. I stood at the gate and watched the truck until it turned the corner. Then I turned and looked at my house. It was quiet. The windows glowed in the evening sun. No more yelling. No more banging. No more demands for $1,500 a month. I went inside and locked the front door. I turned the key twice. The sound of that lock was the sweetest thing I'd heard in years. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I was free. I went to the kitchen, took out a simple white plate, and set the table for one. A few months have passed. My house is peaceful again. Carla helped me find two nice college girls for the upstairs. They're polite, pay their rent on time, and sometimes we share tea in the garden. They treat me like a neighbor, not an ATM. Ryan calls once a week. He's working at a logistics center now. It's hard work, but he sounds prouder than he ever did before. Brooke. She's still Brooke. She sends nasty texts when I don't buy the grandkids expensive gifts, but I delete them without reading. I see my grandkids every couple of weeks. I take them to the zoo or the park. They know now that Grandma isn't a maid, she's the lady with the good stories and the clear rules. Last night, I sat on the patio with Carla. She looked at the freshly painted wall in the dining room. "You can't even tell where the plate hit anymore," she said. I smiled and took a sip of my white wine. The walls healed, Carla. But the best part is, so am I. I've learned that kindness without boundaries isn't a virtue, it's an invitation to be used. I didn't need lawyers or big scenes. I just stopped carrying the weight for people who didn't respect me. Sometimes I still find a little toy car under the couch or one of Brooke's old hair ties in the bathroom. In the old days, that would have made me sad. Now I just smile and toss it. My life belongs to me again. As I turned off the lights that evening, leaving just the little lamp in the hallway, I felt a deep satisfaction. I'm Helen, 68 years old, widow and homeowner. And I know exactly what I'm capable of. I'm capable of being happy on my own terms. The peace in this house is priceless, and I'll never give it up for anyone again. Some people only understand your worth once everything they took for granted suddenly disappears.